A few weeks ago, we were over at our friend's house and she gardens a ton. It's the same one that I made the chicken sign for. She sells eggs kind of on the side of the street from their hen house, and then she has a bunch of stuff in the garden. Anyway, she's always gardening, always picking stuff up, always washing it and cleaning it and cutting it. She has this really large cutting board that she leaves on the counter, and it just sits in this wet pool constantly. Well, it is bowed so much you would not even believe it. And it rocks around on her, which is not safe. So I thought, I've got a bunch of cutting board feet. I make a lot of those anyway. I'll just give her some of those cutting board feet, or I'll try to fix that one that she has and just bolt some of those onto the bottom of it. That way maybe it'll be a non-slip surface and it'll kind of help it. However, it's so bowed, and I don't know that I can overcome how much of a belly is on this board. So I thought, I can do something better. I have a cut-off piece from a slab from some friends of mine. It's a big piece of black walnut. It's still in the rough, and I thought this would be a nice, massive board that I could just make this beautiful live edge board that she can use every day to cut on, put some non-slip feet on it, and I just wanted to do that. I thought it would be a cool way to just tell her, hey, get rid of that other one, use this one, and you won't have those same issues. So come along with me. I'm going to do some stuff on the CNC. This is the piece I'm talking about using right here. You can see it's quite large. This is an offcut that I got from my buddy's shop. He made a big countertop or something out of it. So this piece of black walnut should work very nicely. This is going to be the bottom because it has more of the blonde sapwood on there, and this should be the top. So I need to flatten it first. I'm going to use the Onefinity CNC. Now that I've got one side flat, I can flip it over, putting this flat side down on my table, and then flatten the other side. Normally, I would probably just run this through the planer, but it's slightly too wide with the way the grain is oriented to run through my planer at 20 inches. So I'm just going to do it here on the CNC machine. It'll be pretty fast. Oftentimes the CNC will leave some of these lines that you see, and it's mostly just because I'm going against the grain in different ways. So I take my Surf Prep 6-inch random orbit sander with 80 grit on there, spend a little bit of time, and it all comes out really flat. Now I have to figure out where I want to put some bow ties. I think this is going to be the underside, and this is going to be the top face. And I didn't know that these were here, but it's got some surface cracks. I do need to square this up with a track saw. This side's not straight. I think that'll look better if these two are straight, and then these can be the live edge. And I've got to do some grinding here on the edge. But I'm thinking I might put a few bow ties across here just to get rid of some of this stuff here. And I think it'll look cool. For a big thick piece of hardwood like this, I usually take it with 2 passes on the track saw, doing about halfway through the first time and then finishing the cut the next time. Yeah, this has a lot of checking and cracking here. I'm going to do some filling either with epoxy or with some CA glue in that end, because I don't want to cut off any more of that. I don't want to lose any more of the width of this board. Sixteen and a half. Yep, that looks good. Now I'm going to do some grinding here on the live edge just to clean that up. I don't like leaving the rough bark part. I like getting down to the actual sapwood. And to do that, I'm going to use one of these tungsten carbide grinding dishing wheels. This one, I believe, is either a medium or a fine. I can't remember, but I like it because I can go straight from that to an 80 grit, and it cleans up pretty nicely. You can do some shaping with this. If you want to do some heavy shaping, you'd want to use something that grinds a little heavier than this. But I'm going to open the door and try to get some of this dust to be out there. It just makes a mess. These dishing wheels can leave some pretty serious scratches, so take some time, use some 80 grit or some type of really coarse paper to make sure to get all of those out. I am pretty new to using the Vectric software. I just partnered with them. They're one of my affiliate partners. So if you want to check them out and check out VCarve Pro, which is what I'm using, definitely do that. I'll leave a link below to all of that information. This is a very capable software, and I'm just now starting to learn it, but I'm hoping I can use it more and more, and it will really open up some opportunities for me using my Onefinity CNC machine. I think for fun and just for the look of it, that slab does not need any correction. It doesn't have any big checks or cracks in it. I might want to add a couple of bow ties to it. So I'm going to try to use the VCarve Pro software that I'm new at and inlay a couple of bow ties using the CNC machine. I created all of my shapes for this in Adobe Illustrator. It's something I'm more familiar with. I've used it for design now for a few years. So I just saved all those shapes and then brought them into the Vectric software and told it what to do from there. It was a pretty easy process as far as setting up toolpaths to do whatever you need it to do. They even have an inlay tool that is what I used to do these inlays. Here I'm just using the preview to kind of see what it's going to do as I make these cuts. This is my test cut. I just grabbed a single bow tie and I did it off camera. I didn't even really show that. I just wanted to make sure what the inlay was going to look like and how it was going to fit before I did it in the actual piece. First, I checked out the preview of the pocket that I'm going to make, and in just a moment you'll see that I previewed the outer part or the male part that will fit down into that pocket. Now I'm getting set up for all three of my male inlays, and these are the finals. So I found some curly maple I wanted to use, and I went back into Vectric, setting all of my tools and how many passes I wanted it to do and all of that. Then exported it for my machine and hit go. I'm using a 1/8 inch radius end mill for all of this. I wanted my bow ties to have pretty crisp edges, and this is dependent upon the tool that you use, because for the inside cut, the pocket cut, it's dependent on whatever your bit is. That radius that your bit is as tight as the turn can go. I found the spot where I wanted the inlays to go, and here I'm just kind of laying out. I got the overall size of what all three inlays were together, so I basically created a box that was that size just so I could kind of visualize and see what it would look like in that space. That way I could actually mark the center and tell this job to start from the center rather than like the left bottom corner or whatever. For me, that was just an easier way to make sure that the bow ties ended up in the spot I wanted them. Before I removed the board from the CNC, I wanted to do one more thing. I wanted to add a juice groove, a groove all the way around the outside of this thing. I had to do some layout though, because with the live edges and this thing being kind of an irregular shape, I was wondering how it would look to have kind of a traditional square-ish juice groove. I wanted to lay that out before I ever made any cuts and make sure it would look right and make sure I could get it in the right place. Luckily, everything worked out just fine, and I ended up going down about 1/4 inch for the juice groove. I didn't show any of this. I simply drew out a rectangle in Vectric and just told it to cut right on the line using a bowl bit. I basically left just an onion skin on the bow ties that I cut out, so I sent them through the drum sander a couple of times just to free them. And I know from doing other inlays, it goes better to chamfer the bottom side of your piece that's going to inlay into the piece, your male piece. That just makes it to where it wants to kind of slide in place, and you'll never see this because it'll be down inside. I started out using a little tack hammer, but that just did not have enough oomph, so I had to move to a different hammer. Something you want to be careful of when you're doing this is do not split your piece by hammering too hard on one side or the other. Once I get it started, I like to get a block of wood or something that I can put down on my bow tie and then smack that so that it distributes the weight. This is when I noticed that right around the edge, I've got a little bit of splintering. All that means is my tolerance was probably too tight. By the time the glue got on the inlay, it swelled it up a little bit, and it was such a tight fit that as I hammered it home, it split off a little bit of the bottom piece of the inlay. So in the future, I'm gonna have to adjust this tolerance just a little bit so that the fit is not quite so tight. I think I made the pocket about 2/100ths of an inch shallower than my actual bow tie. So that left the bow tie sticking proud just a little bit. It wasn't even enough that I really had to flush trim it with a saw. I could just use my sander with 120 grit to sand it off. I decided this thing is already really custom. I might as well add a custom message on the back with my laser, so I threw it in there and let it go to town. I sanded everything up to 120 grit and then I raised the grain with some water. If you don't do this, the first time that this board gets wet, it will feel all fuzzy like you didn't even sand it. So before I do my final sanding at 220, I always raise the grain on something like this that's gonna get wet. I just spent some time sanding the faces and all of the grooves and everything before adding some of this finish. This is from Atomic Finishes. It's a hard wax oil that you scrub into the board and it dries down in there, and it gives an excellent protective finish. I use a white Scotch-Brite pad to scrub it in and then let it sit for 20 or 30 minutes. Then I come back with a paper towel or a towel and wipe off all of the excess and let it sit overnight, ideally. Well, this was just a fun project. These are the nicest people, and they happen to really like a lot of my woodworking stuff. So it's a joy to work for people like that. They didn't even know that I'm doing this, and I just love blessing people and doing things for people, and they get such a kick out of it. So thanks for coming along with me, figuring out this software, turning some scrap piece that a friend gave me into something cool that can replace that old warped board that she had, and hopefully she'll make great use of it. Let's go take it to her. Hey, Pops. Howdy. Something for you.
You did that!
That's
Oh,
good.
you little turkey lurkey.
That's beautiful.
Got your
my
juice
gosh.
groove.
Dude! That's like...
Oh.
Nobody can take it.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Unless their name's Kim. It's beautiful.
Oh, Bruce!
It turned out good, didn't it?
You big turkey
And
butt.
look, now it'll sit up, so it won't. It'll sit up off your camera.
Ah!
And you got the prettiest one around.
Hey.
That's beautiful.
It turned out good with some curly maple in there.
You know I love this stuff, right? Oh, you're such
Yeah.
a turd. Get in there. Come on.
Hey,